Hi, I'm Dr Jon Chandler, Teaching Fellow in History at UCL, and welcome to the class. This is a taster from an undergraduate course that I teach at UCL called Native North America, 1600 to 1850. This course is about the indigenous peoples of North America who have long and diverse histories, stretching back at least 15,000 years. In this course, we use historical, archaeological, and anthropological methods to explore themes including ritual and belief, warfare and diplomacy, gender and sexuality, and power and violence. By exploring colonization from indigenous perspectives, we analyze how native cultures and identities were created, subverted, and reinvented in North America. In this taster class, I would like us to think about indigenous responses to epidemic disease. From the earliest times to the present day, epidemics have had a colossal effect on human history. Humans have never known a time in history when epidemics did not loom large. This is as true today as it ever was, and I believe that there is much we can learn in 2020 from how our ancestors confronted the threat of epidemic disease. Disease occupies a central place in the history of Americas, as three distinct populations, Europeans, Africans, and Native Americans, were brought together in sustained close contact for the first time. American Indians suffered appalling mortality, especially for the first century after contact. While some populations disappeared, most others survived, but did not recover to pre-contact population levels until the 20th century. Estimates for the population of North America in 1492 vary widely, from as low as 2 million to as high as 18 million. However, by 1800, the population of North America had declined by as much as 75%. How do we explain this outcome? There is great appeal in turning to the inevitability of virgin soil epidemics, which holds that since American Indians had long been separated from Old World populations, they lacked immunity to Old World pathogens and died, inevitably in great numbers once those pathogens were introduced. This theory received its clearest and most influential statement in Jared Diamond's Pulitzer Prize-winning book Guns, Germs, and Steel, which was published in 1997. As he explained, the main killers were Old World germs to which Indians had never been exposed, and against which they had therefore neither immune nor genetic resistance. To explain how this happened, Diamond asked his readers to join him in turning back the clock to 11,000 BC. Nothing then could have predicted European success. However, everything changed by the year 1492. The dense settlements and domestication of animals in Old World agriculture exposed Eurasians to animal microbes and facilitated the emergence of epidemic diseases. The initial cost of those infections produced a lasting benefit. Those humans then evolved substantial resistance to the new diseases. The Americas, however, did not have this experience, and as a result, Diamond argued, American Indians did not develop similar resistance to disease. The outcome of European arrival in the Americas was predestined. When such partly immune people come into contact with others who had no previous exposure to their germs, epidemics resulted, in which up to 99% of the previously unexposed population was killed. Diamond's work has had enormous reach. It remained on the New York Times bestseller list for over 2 years and sold over 1 million copies. When President Clinton awarded Diamond a National Medal of Science in 2000, he cited, amongst other things, Diamond's exceptionally creative scholarship. But is the theory correct? Diamond, like many others, asserted that American Indians had neither immune nor genetic resistance to disease. This makes no sense. Indians, like all humans, have elaborate immune systems and can mount a powerful defense against viruses, bacteria, funguses, and parasites, even on first exposure. No one is immunologically defenseless. But had something left Indians' immune systems more deficient? Many assertions of no immunity rely on the claim that Indian isolation in the disease-free paradise of the Americas had weakened their immune systems. But archaeologists have now shown that many diseases existed in the Americas before Europeans arrived, including tuberculosis, pneumonia, typhoid, salmonella, and many others. Indian immune systems had plenty of exercise. Similarly, despite decades of study, researchers have found no evidence of dramatic differences in racial susceptibility to tuberculosis, smallpox, measles, or other prominent pathogens. Some writers discount genetic differences and argue instead that the key difference was Indians' lack of acquired immunity. This is mostly relevant for a very small number of viral pathogens such as smallpox or measles. Many other viruses and bacteria pathogens can infect and reinfect people repeatedly. At the same time, it could be that no special mechanisms are needed to explain the fates of American Indians. Historians have long known that social conditions have had a huge impact on the severity and outcome of epidemics. If mortality takes place over a long period of time, then there are many forces, even mundane ones, that could have eroded the population. Many Indian societies had marginally nutritional status before contact. Baseline malnutrition might have left American Indians vulnerable at the outset to European diseases. When the conditions of colonization disrupted subsistence, the situation only grew worse. Any factor that causes mental or physical stress, displacement, warfare, drought, destruction of crops, soil depletion, overwork, slavery, malnutrition, socio-economic chaos, can increase susceptibility to disease. Natural disasters, including droughts, crop failures, earthquakes and volcanoes, hurricanes, all contributed to the suffering. As they study the epidemics and their possible causes, historians have imagined the social and psychological toll that the epidemics must have taken. Alfred Crosby, for instance, after describing virgin soil epidemics, provides a vivid description of an Indian village in the aftermath. The fire goes out, and the cold creeps in. The sick, whom a bit of food and a cup of water might save, die of hunger and the dehydration of fever. The seed remains above the ground as the best season for planting passes, or there is no one well enough to harvest the crop before the frost. Other historians have described a host of harmful behaviours. Some Indians comforted the sick instead of quarantining them and exposed themselves to contagion. Others fled, spreading the contagion far and wide. Traditional Indian remedies had no power against smallpox and other pathogens. Historians single out specific practices such as long sweat baths and saunas, followed by jumps into cold water, as particularly damaging. The disfigurement and demoralization of the epidemics, combined with observations that Europeans remained healthy, shook Indian confidence in their religious leaders and beliefs. Historians have found countless reports from the 16th through to the 19th centuries of parents killing their children, of husbands killing their wives, and of individuals committing suicide to be spared the horror of the disease. All these factors disrupted subsistence, counterproductive responses, and demoralization, compounded the biological effects of the epidemics, and accentuated their mortality. There is no doubt that such things happen in some, maybe in many places, but it is important to recognize the variability and complexity of Indian responses to mortality. Historians have found evidence of alternative narratives, ones that emphasize the resilience, adaptability, and agency of American Indian populations. For example, Cherokee societies and their leaders responded constructively to the challenges of epidemics. Cherokee religious leaders developed explanations that fit well with their existing disease theories involving spirits, witchcraft, taboo violations, and other upsets to the supernatural order. In contrast to what many historians have written, the Cherokee did practice quarantine, either isolating the sick or moving them out of villages. And in addition to healing rituals, they employed a range of herbal remedies, which at the very least were more benign than the bleeding and mercury popular among European physicians. All of these techniques gave the Cherokee a sense of control over their destiny. To prepare for our class, I would like you to read 3 primary source extracts that might offer us a glimpse into how the Cherokee took action against the threat of smallpox epidemics in the 18th and 19th centuries. The first is from James Adair's History of the American Indians, which was first published in 1775. James Adair was an Anglo-Irish trader who lived among Native Americans for 40 years. Adair's depiction of the Cherokee's experience with smallpox in 1738 provides one of the most detailed accounts of how indigenous practitioners responded to epidemic disease, but it is flawed due to his desire to prove that the indigenous peoples of the Americas were descended from the lost tribe of Israel. The second extract is from the missionary Daniel Buttrick, who spent most of his adult life among the Cherokee. He left several volumes of ethnographic information that he acquired in the 1820s and 1830s from informants who had recently converted or were considering doing so. This information, however, was often filtered through a Judeo-Christian lens, which distorted Cherokee beliefs in multiple spirit beings to fit a monotheistic worldview. The third extract is a Cherokee oral history that was transcribed by James Mooney, an anthropologist who lived among the Cherokees for several years in the 1890s. Mooney, like his professional peers, sought to make a permanent record of Native American beliefs and customs, which he thought existed unchanged from the time before the arrival of Europeans. However, at times he fails to recognize that Native peoples lost knowledge and abandoned practices, as well as introduced new ideas and customs from outsiders. There are three questions that I'd like you to consider as you read these sources. Firstly, what methods are employed by the Cherokee to combat epidemic disease? Secondly, what are the strengths and weaknesses of these sources, in particular considering that each one is filtered through the eyes of a Euro-American observer with his own prejudices and assumptions? And thirdly, do these sources, either individually or collectively, allow us to question the virgin soil theory? Thank you for watching, and I hope you get on well with those sources. I will talk to you in our online class later on. Goodbye.